Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Thursday. Brian Kamenetsky and Andy Kamenetsky. Andy, what is the relationship between Russell Westbrook and Phil Jackson, and how does that impact what the Lakers do this offseason? That's next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how you get your podcasts or where you get your podcasts. We always have
even why you get your podcasts.
I don't care why.
Nope.
Just that
long as you're downloading, clicking.
Yes. Your
Not
motivations are personal and they're not my business. That's exactly
we believe in
right.
privacy at the Locked On Lakers podcast.
That's right. We will never ask you probing questions.
As long as it's communal privacy that we benefit from. Don't care.
Click over and over and over again. It's fine.
I will. It's OCD. Wonderful. We don't care.
Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to get this thing a little bit early, and you get to see us as well as listen to us. I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by Sakara Nutrition. Sakara is a wellness company anchored in food as medicine on a mission to nourish. Go to sakara.com/lockedon20. or enter the code LOCKEDON20 for a 20% off discount at checkout. So, yeah, a lot of 20s there. Kind of lets you know where they're going with that. All right. So, Andy, you have a thought exercise for me today that we're going to get to. I do not know what it is, and I am very excited to get to that, and then we'll find out what that is in a moment.
You know me, Brian. I love a good thought exercise.
Oh, yeah, and May is thought exercise season. If this team is not in the playoffs, we're in a bit of a news desert. There's not much action happening in the coaching front. Can't have any trades right now. There's no free agency. They're not even part of the draft. We saw what happened in the draft lottery. The Lakers' number 8 pick is in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, future Laker. I'm going to consider that player a Laker.
But lucky for you, me, and the listeners, sometimes weird crap just pops into my head. We're going to explore it today.
Thankfully. But let's talk first about some stuff that we haven't had a chance to get to. We spent a little bit of time on Wednesday's show on Russell Westbrook and the consternation among Lakers fans at the idea that the Lakers were talking to prospective head coaches about how they might use Russell Westbrook. Because, hey, guys, there's a chance he could be on the team. Part of that equation, according to reporting from Sam Amick and I believe some others now, is that the connection to Phil Jackson, who has also been a topic of conversation around the Lakers coaching search, is related to the Westbrook thing, and in kind of intriguing ways.
Yeah, reading from Sam's piece, quote, "To that end, it's worth revisiting my report from earlier this month about Jackson's affinity for Westbrook. When the decision was made to fire Vogel, there was a belief from on high that Westbrook wasn't put in a position to succeed. For Jackson's part, sources say he has cited the Gary Payton dilemma from the 2003-2004 Lakers season as a way of illustrating a coach's need to make the best of roster decisions that weren't his preference. In essence, deal with the hand that you're dealt with rather than complain about it." And it goes on to say that when they added Payton and Malone to Kobe and Shaq, it was really Dr. Buss who was driving that decision to bring in Gary Payton as opposed to just sticking with Derek Fisher, who had been a part of 3 championships, as their point guard. And Jackson had to convince Derek Fisher to come off the bench. There was a lot of tension with that team.
You were following the team much closer than I was at that point.
Yeah,
but like the Peyton part of it, I mean, people look at that team and think of it as this unmitigated failure and disaster. They went to the finals,
right? And look, it's not an apples to apples comparison in the sense that you had Kobe and Shaq together, still playing very well. That covers over a lot of issues that you had. And, however you want to say that Phil dealt with the hand that he was given, he and Peyton didn't particularly get along. Peyton was
right. I was about to say it didn't work.
Right.
And in the conventional sense.
Right. And ultimately he would have been better just playing Peyton off the bench and starting Fish. But what I think though is important about this is it's led a lot of people to, I think, see Phil Jackson as a bigger Russell Westbrook proponent than he may be. And to be clear, he might be a huge Russell Westbrook proponent. He does not seem like the type of player that Phil would
His cabin in Montana could be covered with Russell Westbrook fatheads for all we know.
Yeah, I mean, Russ has never struck me. I mean, you and I covered Phil Jackson for several seasons. We covered the Kobe Powell teams on a daily basis. We were there up close.
Is he a triangle guy, Andy, Russell Westbrook?
That doesn't
strike me as
unless you want to talk yourself into the idea that Russ can be decent operating out of the post in the way that Kobe sometimes was, except Kobe was a way better player than Russ, whatever. But what I think people need to understand is Phil making these points, and the exacts with all of these have not been reported, and I doubt ever will be. That doesn't necessarily mean that he is championing Russell Westbrook. Like, for example, if he thinks that Frank Vogel misused Russell Westbrook, that could mean on the court. It could mean he thought that maybe he coddled Russ too much. It could have been a form of mismanagement in the locker room. It could mean a lot of different things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he is trying to portray Russ as the Russell Westbrook of old, and there's something there that can be unlocked to that.
Or even as a victim necessarily in this scenario.
It could just be, look, I think there's a different way to go about doing this. And in lieu of making a really bad deal that I think could hurt the franchise, and that's something you and I have talked about a lot, I think there could be different ways to approach this since, as we discussed Wednesday, he may be on the team next season.
I look at this, because he talked about, like you said, I think that question of on the court being misused versus kind of in the locker room, did the Lakers have the right infrastructure around it? I haven't listened to the show yet, but I know, just from kind of clicking around, Anthony Irwin, our former co-host here, he just did a show with some guys from, I believe, Mavs Moneyball at SBA.
Yeah, Kirk Henderson.
Right.
He's great, by the way.
Kind of talking about the influence that Jason Kidd might have had on this team. And we actually did make a pretty big deal out of the chance, the thing that they could have hired Scott Brooks, or at least we're kicking the tires on that. And it just didn't quite fit in terms of staff and the hierarchy that are established, and,
the money.
They
got outbid.
They did, but there are also other, staff hierarchy things that we're playing, but a little bit of money. How that would have potentially made, but could Jason Kidd's influence have it? Did the Lakers if you have this person, have you put the right infrastructure around it to succeed? And I think this is actually one of the major problems with the Lakers last year, was they made this massive investment in Westbrook and then didn't do everything that they could possibly do to make sure it worked. They spent all of this money. They put this year was $45 million towards Russ, but then drew the line, whether it's in coaches, whether it's in the rest of the team in terms of creating the best possible roster or whatever. And so, and maybe we can talk more about this after the break. Phil, like you say, could be talking about putting a better architecture around Russ in a lot of different ways.
Or he could just be taking a lot of peyote. I have no idea.
Yeah. So I don't
know what's going on.
Let's talk a little bit more, though, about this stuff next.
Locked On Lakers brought to you by Truebill. You know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam.
Oh, sorry, rhetorical question.
Right. Jesus, Brian, because it's a scam. They're out to get you. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions you don't need, want, or just forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 a year with Truebill. Companies make subscriptions hard to cancel, especially for dolts like you, Brian. But Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Simple enough, Brian, that you could follow along. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. Truebill has over 2 million users, and they have helped them save collectively over $100 million. So don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today with Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Again, go to Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. It could save you thousands a year. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA.
Locked on Lakers also brought to you by Built. Andy, imagine for a second you could take your hand and just dip it into like a big birthday cake. You're out at a friend's birthday and you just dip it right into it. It's disgusting and rude. You shouldn't do it, but it's delicious. Imagine if you could do that. Now imagine you could do that in your own home in a place where you will not get yelled at and it won't be disgusting and it'll actually be good for you. That is what the Built the puffs, the birthday cake puffs from Built Bar are for. The 150 calories, 16 grams of protein, and they are delicious. If you haven't tried them, you really should.
They're really good.
They are, and they're covered in white chocolate. They are enrobed, as the folks at Built like to say, in white chocolate. I mentioned it, 150 calories, so not much for a nice, very filling snack because of the 16 grams of protein and very low in sugar, only 9 grams of sugar. It's a limited time flavor, and it's an amazing option if you're looking for a healthy way to get some flavor and variety into your day. So you go to Built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. Again, that's the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. What do you think the percentage is? And this is a debate that we've sort of had in the comment section on Locked On Lakers, on YouTube, at Cam Brothers on Twitter. Like, what is the percentage chance, do you think, that Russell Westbrook can be a productive on-court player this year? Because there are incentives not just for the Lakers to make it work, but there are incentives for Westbrook to make it work as opposed to being paid to sit on the sidelines or something like that. Because assuming he wants to continue his career after this year, not playing isn't going to help him.
You have to look at this, first of all, in terms of how you define productive at lower than his contract. Like, you are not going to get $47 million.
No.
It's important to point this out because if you are looking for Russ to live up to the dollar amount of his contract, then you're going to define production in a way that is going to be disappointing, dissatisfying, and maybe lead you to overlook some positives that could be there. If you are willing to think of Russ as a $15 to $20 million player who happens to just be getting double that salary, but if you're looking for that type of production from what would normally be slated for like a third or sometimes even fourth option on a team, I think it is possible.
By the way, sweet gig where you can be a fourth, fifth best guy, and you're talking about like a legitimate $17 million salary.
Yeah, timing is everything.
I should have tried harder to be a better basketball player.
Yeah, timing is everything, both in this day and age, and also for Russell Westbrook, where he is now financially, where he is as a player. I think it does get overlooked that as bad of a fit, I think both on the court and culturally as Russ was for the most part on this team, there were a lot of games where he was not as bad as he was often made out to be. And I think had AD and LeBron been available more, and say a guy like THT had not been put in a position that he just wasn't ready for, and Kendrick Nunn had constituted a living body on the court.
Had the players that they signed been better? Like, there was just a lot of stuff that went wrong. Yeah,
sure. Just a couple of them. Or look, everything I laid out, and just Austin Reeves plays the way he did, Monk plays the way he did, Melo plays the way he did, and the other guys, whatever. But if all of those things happened, then Westbrook's issues are not as glaring or problematic as they were.
Yeah. I think that he was no question. Russ was an avatar for everything that went wrong in the season, and despite a deserving one, because a lot of it was connected to him, and so much of what they did was built around him and the idea of taking this massive and totally unnecessary swing. But this is the argument I get into all the time with people who say you should just pay him to go away. He's not trash. He's not a replacement level NBA player. He's not that bad. And to take that when you have very few avenues to make your roster better and just sideline it because you anticipate it being a problem, or you don't want to do the work of trying to figure out how to get something out of it. I just think it's a massive mistake. You might end up there anyway. I'm not naive, but to start there, you're not going to find they don't have access to a player as good as Russell Westbrook is now.
No.
Flawed as he is, as difficult as he is to integrate into what you're doing, they don't have a way to find somebody of that talent and skill and production level. But you're right. You can't think of him as a $47 million player, but they don't have a $12 million slot for that.
Right. The only argument you could make, I guess, for just deciding proactively before this season even begins, if Russ is on this roster, we are going to pay him to go away. The only reason I can think of that you would do that is if you are concerned that the bargain bin shopping that you're going to be doing to fill out this roster, you would lose out on the best possibilities, a month into the season. Like you are looking for you're looking to basically just, if you
like somebody wouldn't sign with the Lakers because Westbrook was there.
No, he would just be on another team. I'm saying like you would lose out on opportunities if you were not proactively looking for the guy that would fill Russ's slot while you were either you waived him and ate the money.
The season begins, right? Yeah,
right. Right. That's the only argument I can think of for if he's on the team not giving it a try.
That's a very narrow.
I'm not saying it's a compelling argument. I'm saying it's the only one I can think of.
So I think a lot remains to be seen about what the exact connection is between Phil. The one thing I will say is, Phil was a Vogel fan. I mean, Phil helped steer the Lakers to Vogel in the first place when he was available. So I don't think he was looking to try to sort of, slam his guy there. They're just, they are in a really bad spot. And, it is not crazy to think that a fresh start and a different way of approaching Westbrook and how he's used with with some give, a lot of give, like legit give on Russ's side could lead to a different result.
Look, if you're asking me if it's probable, the answer is no.
Absolutely not. I don't think it is.
But I don't think it's impossible.
It's a non-0% chance.
And either way, it is a scenario that they could very well be dealing with. So they need to try to put themselves in the best situation possible while dealing with it, unless they are just willing to make any deal whatsoever, no matter how bad it is, no matter how much it may cripple the Lakers with their very limited options anyway moving forward.
Because again, the issue is of trading those picks isn't that you desperately want to wait for the 2029 pick to reach the Lakers. Like that's how they're going to rebuild. No, it's because you can't trade it twice. Once you trade that pick, you can't use it again. And when you have very few assets, you need to use them wisely. Trading them to get rid of something is probably not the best use.
A guy that is only going to be around one more year max.
Look, both of us are perfectly willing to criticize management, criticize the front office. It partially explains how we're here and why we're here. But that doesn't mean you have to freak out at literally everything that could kind of be bad or seems potentially embarrassing or weird about what they're doing. Anyway, thought exercise time. Do you want to start the thought exercise now or break and start it afterwards? You want to set up the thought exercise?
Okay. I'm just going to give you a hint about what it involves. The Lakers have a coaching vacancy to fill out. They've got a big time dilemma. They have been a revolving door with coach. Coach has been a problem for this organization. Agreed.
Yes.
It has not been something that...
Is this the thought exercise? Because so far I'm with you. Okay.
No, it's not the thought exercise. I'm just laying out the parameters of what got me thinking about this.
All right. True.
And this is a very big decision for them because they need to try to right the ship, but also fix themselves reputationally when it comes to coaches.
Also true.
They have a Russell Westbrook problem, and the market for him is going to be very thin. And it is going to be difficult to trade him, I think, at least, in ways that benefit the team, or at the very least don't harm the team big picture in the process.
Okay.
And
This
even
is the
if you,
stretching portion of the thought exercise. We're not exercising yet.
no, just stretching it, just laying out all the parameters.
Okay.
And they have cap flexibility issues in the sense that they have none. they have very little wiggle room to try to fix an extremely flawed roster.
Okay.
Coming up, I will explain the connection points between all three of these and how, if you are willing to think a little radically, we might be able to solve this in one fell swoop. I will explain that coming up next. But first, Locked On Lakers brought to you by Sakara. Feeling your best starts with what you eat. Sakara helps you live a healthy, balanced lifestyle and truly enjoy it with plant-rich nutrition that builds a foundation for living in your best body. With Sakara, you get nutrient-dense meals, snacks, and supplements that nourish without sacrificing quality or taste. Made with organic, high-quality ingredients, Sakara's plant-rich transformational nutrition programs are expertly designed to deliver real results. They're a wellness company anchored in food as medicine. That is Sakara's mission. I had a peach parfait, Brian, for breakfast, which sounds incredibly decadent for the morning, except it was totally healthy. The protein power plate with curried green lentils, roasted cauliflower, rainbow carrot, a cooling coconut yogurt, and turmeric flatbread. This was awesome. I mean, like, this was
Turmeric
amazing.
flatbread was the name of my band in high school.
There's also a really good French lentil soup, all plant-based, all really good, and all delivered right to your door, ready to eat. From their best-selling Metabolism Superpower to the Foundation, their daily supplement packs, Sakara's products are designed to support your wellness goals anytime, anywhere. And right now, Sakara is offering our listeners 20% off their first order when they go to sakara.com/lockedon20 or enter lockedon20 at the checkout. It's Sakara, sakara.com/lockedon20 to get 20% off your first order. Sakara.com/lockedon20.
All right, Andy. So you had some things you laid out before the break, and you were going to put them together, and then I will begin thinking in an exercisey kind of way.
Now, I want to preface this by saying I have gotten no sense that this is a direction that the Lakers would be looking to go. This is not anything that I'm reporting or poking around about. This is just something that popped into my head that I was thinking about that would, again, be very radical, but it could be a way of potentially addressing all their issues at once. The Lakers convinced
to
Russ,
remind people that you have a coaching problem, a Westbrook problem, and a cap flexibility problem.
Yes.
Okay.
The Lakers convinced Russ to opt out of his $47 million player option, which Russ has said this is up to him. It's his option. That's why they call it a player option. That's what he said during the exit interview. And I think it's safe to say everybody believes he's going to opt in, but the Lakers have to convince him to opt out. And then Russ announces he's retiring. He is going to retire. He felt just like last season was a sign that, you know what, I'm just not. Russ even said, as much as he was throwing Frank Vogel under the bus, as much as he didn't feel that he was used correctly, as much as he didn't feel like he was, allowed to be Russ the way LeBron and AD kept talking about let Russ be Russ. He said that didn't really happen. But he also said to Russ's credit in being candid that he did not play well. And he's just decided, you know what, I'm not the same guy. I don't want to play as a diminished version of myself.
So he opts out
and retires.
And then retires.
Yes.
Okay.
The Lakers.
So far, what I'm thinking in this exercise is you're a moron, but keep going.
No. The Lakers,
it is radical.
It's radical.
Okay.
The Lakers hire him to a $47 million coaching contract. 5 years, $9.4 million per year. That would make Russ, I believe, the highest paid coach in the league other than Greg Popovich. So, I mean, that is a sign of respect. Like, if you are giving Russell Westbrook,
I know where you're going with this.
Right. That kind of money straight out of the gate, no coaching experience whatsoever. The last interactions we saw of him with a coach went poorly. But Russ gets 5 years, $9.4 million guaranteed as the Lakers' next coach. I believe that would put the Lakers $19 million under the cap. The cap is projected at, I believe, 122 from the last thing I read on The Athletic. $122 million. The luxury tax level is 149. So according to my math, I believe it gets the Lakers $19 million under the cap. And
I'm yes-anding. I'm not gonna make anybody check your math.
You can do some legit shopping with $19 million. It also gets them, I believe, to a different tax, the non-tax paying mid-level exception. It opens up more flexibility with Malik Monk, and it gives the Lakers an opportunity to potentially build out their roster more. However,
yes,
this has to work with Russell Westbrook as the coach, because A, you needed to work with him as a coach. B, if you think the Lakers are not taken seriously in this regard now, wait till you see what happens after they fire Russell Westbrook 4 months into a $47 million contract. They're never going to get another good coach. But you get the opportunity to build the roster. You get Russ off the roster, and you find your coach.
How about this? I'm surprised. This is where I thought you were going. And this is all predicated on the idea that Westbrook wants to stop playing. Because
Russ has to play ball. There's no question.
You're so stupid. Here's what you do.
Am I stupid?
Or am I so smart? Here's what you do. You sign him to the 4-year deal or whatever, 5 years, whatever you want to do, however you want to spread it out.
5 years, $47 million.
Okay. And then you fire him. And hire another coach.
No, Brian, the Lakers are not going to be taken seriously as a coaching destination if that's what they do. Coaches around the league, Brian, take this stuff very seriously.
No.
They're already
fire him.
Brian, they were mad at the way. Brian, they were mad at the way Frank Vogel ended up getting fired by the Woj tweet. You don't think they're going to be mad if they trick Russell Westbrook into thinking that he's the coach of this team?
Are they fooling? Is this really like this?
No, this is real. They are hiring Russell Westbrook.
I thought it was a scheme. I thought it was a scheme to try to get Russ Russ gets his money.
No, Brian. Russell Westbrook is the coach of this effing team.
Okay.
Because like I said, the Lakers need this to work because they're already considered a clown show when it comes to coaches. So you can't do this and look like even more of a clown show.
Now I got to rethink this a little bit.
No, I'm not trying to pull a switcheroo with Russ.
No, I thought we were trying to basically fool the league in a way that would incentivize Russ to walk away, but still give him his money.
No, Brian. Okay. He has to coach or else the league is going to call BS. He has to coach for a little while.
This is true. Now, in this case, do you hire the sort of Jason Kidd
this?
Magic Johnson on the couch, right? Do you have to hire the sort of Jason Kidd style coach in waiting in this scenario?
He needs a strong lead assistant. There's no question.
There's no question. Terry Stotts. There you go. There's a
Scott Brooks.
Still
Coach
out there.
Scott Brooks.
I'm willing to give it a try.
Right?
To give it a try.
You gotta be radical. Like, let's think about this. As much as you and I are intrigued,
which is more, but what you're asking here is what's more important, the roster construction or the coach?
Yeah.
Now, do we know for sure that Russell Westbrook could be a terrible coach?
No. We don't know that.
We don't know that.
We have no idea.
We do know that the current roster construction that they have and the flexibility they have is likely to be is unlikely to produce the results anybody wants.
And look, here's the thing too, Brian. Like, has Russ given indications, like projections, that he would be a great coach in the way that, say, people used to talk about Luke Walton as this, player coach on the floor?
They were wrong, weren't they?
Exactly. That's my point. Luke hasn't been very good at all. We liked Luke and we covered him, but let's be honest, he has not been successful at all as a coach. Just because Russ hasn't projected this doesn't mean maybe this is actually the best role for him.
Think of the fits too that Russ would bring to the coaching, podium and stuff like that. And if it works, Andy,
pre and post,
God, what a
faster.
Story! Yes, what a story this would be.
Right. I mean, Russ knows exactly how players want to be coached and not want to be coached because he never wants to be coached. So,
at the very least, he knows very well how he wants to be coached and doesn't want to be coached. This really is one of those questions. What do you value more, the roster or the coach?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, where the Lakers are right now, you can certainly make the argument that the coach is less important than the roster construction ability.
Well, here's the thing, too. I mean, as much as you and I have been intrigued at the prospect of Darvin
Westbrook as
Ham,
coach? Oh,
no,
no.
Darvin Ham or like a Sam Cassell, like
Charles Lee.
Charles Lee, like the truth is, none of them are so great that we know of that you have to be that worried about missing out on them, even if you think coaching matters. But this has to work because the Lakers reputationally cannot afford another really fast flameout. Like they can't.
No, right.
They've had 5 coaches since Phil Jackson, a little over a decade ago.
Phil's a fan of Russ. What if Phil is the associate head coach? Like a little package deal. Like Obi-Wan and Anakin on the bench together.
Can you do that through Zoom? Because Phil ain't getting his ass up from Montana and traveling
I
around.
don't see, I mean, just it goes Russ and then like presumably like Penberthy is still there. And then
we want to keep a little continuity.
Right. And then like an iPad with Phil on it.
On the throne chair.
On the throne chair. And then whoever is next. And then whoever's in the back row. Like, and it's somebody's job in the back row to make sure that Phil is positioned to always follow the action.
Yes. Phil can do the whistle over Zoom.
I'm willing to give it a try.
Like I said, it's an intriguing idea.
Back in the day, this is when we would have opened the phones to decide whether or not people like. Leave in the comments section. Is this? I would like to not is this a good idea or a bad idea? I would like in the comments section for people who are sticking around here for this, for you to tell us your even more radical ideas on how to fix the Lakers. Because if this is a baseline, what can be even more radical?
$19 million in additional spending. That could be huge for the Lakers.
Right, and you can sweeten it for us instead of 5 years, maybe make it $47 million for 3 years.
Whatever. I mean, either way, you got to eat the money. Whatever it is. I mean, you're paying.
But he doesn't want to have to. Some guys does he want to be on the Bobby Bonilla plan? He doesn't want to collect. He wants more of it. I'm just saying.
Look, maybe Russ as a coach doesn't want to be tethered to one team too long. I have no idea.
He wants to be able to renegotiate after he wins a couple titles.
It is $47 million guaranteed, so it's not like Russ won't get this money. And again, it needs to work. Like firing him in 5 months does not solve this problem.
It solves part of your problem, but it does lead to others. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go to leave comments about what might be a more radical way of dealing with the Lakers problem than the thought exercise that Andy has proposed in today's episode. Hey, why not? Leave us your suggestions for guests, topics, all that stuff that you want to hit. We will see everybody on Friday.